Yeah, of course. And that's a very good point that I talk to the storytellers. Liv would be able to also be a testament to that. You know, we have to be humble to the fact that we are never going to share our whole life story all the time. Like, we are a product of time and space, and that is infinite, right? And I think, to me, it's always, what is the question that we want answered? So if you are going to offer a little bit of your soul and a little bit of yourself to somebody as a storyteller, then why? What is the question that is being asked of you? What are they really looking for? And then try to think of that why. And there are many whys. We are layered with experience, with contradictions, with, and so I try to, with the storytellers in my events and the platform that I created, we limit it to about between 10 to 15 minutes. So the time itself gives you some, boundaries there. The other element that I say is try to answer the question. So because of the human paradigm that I created, we always focus around one of those themes. So it's either around integrity. So I always ask the question for the event on integrity, for example, is, what are the tools, and how do you feel whole in a world that constantly tries to break you? Can you answer that question? Look for the answers in your story in relationship to that question. And the other thing I always advise, and especially young people, and this is more to protect you really, don't ever, and even the older women in the audience too, but don't share a story that you're still living, because that is still very vulnerable and raw in your body. The stories that are really good to offer to an audience are the ones that you're ready to let go of. The stories that you're still living, that are still hurting you, probably not a good idea to tap into. Because if you share something and you look back, especially if it's being recorded, you may harm yourself or re-harm somebody, and it's just not, you don't have enough perspective. You don't have enough wisdom to look at that story with kindness to offer it to someone else and say, I'm ready to let that one go. So, and sometimes even the ones that you've let go down the road in 10 years may come back to you with a different perspective because you come full circle, but then you've already done a lot of healing work, right? So those are some of the parameters I share with my storytellers, is try to answer the question. Try to dig into the elements of your experience that answer that question, so we ground it around that. And the other ethical element is be careful with yourself and with the people in your life too, because, the way we narrate a story can harm people. And so I'm always very cautious of that. We, at Feminine Harbor, we don't want to cause more harm. I'll give you an example for women who have gone through some difficult experiences with their former partners, right? And there's a lot of hurt and abuse. Our platform is not one to bash on that man or that woman, regardless of what kind of relationship it was. It's really about, how did you get through your hurt, and own that story, right? Because that person might have also experienced trauma that you're not even aware of. And then that caused abuse, mutual abuse sometimes, right? So we have to be careful, I think, and just sort of put those parameters and those boundaries in place. It helps. I think when I'm talking to a storyteller, we always hold a workshop prior to the event. So we have a workshop where it's really a wonderful time to allow those storytellers to bond and to get to know each other in a more intimate way that they wouldn't necessarily when they're sharing the stage, because it's like going up and, so there's a workshop prior to that, either at a studio of one of our board members or at my home. Sometimes if they have kids, I try to accommodate that. But one of the things for me is it still hurting when you tell me? Are you still going to cry when you tell me? Because if you're still hurting from it, and if you're still angry, so those like big emotions, then that's probably something that is still too raw for you to share. And sometimes it's a different cry. Like sometimes I see women like who you can't tell the story of your stillbirth and the baby that is gone without your eyes getting water. But there's a different way that presents in the body, where, you know, I can tell when there's still a lot of hold and anger. So you're still processing that. But if it's just a gentle cry of like, that's something that happened and it's never going back, you're ready to let that go and to share that with community, because you realize, and I also think, Olivia, that people, there's something about stories that they realize, you know what, like, I truly think this could benefit other people in the community. When there's that sense of this, I'm ready to gift this to the community. I know that my experience was hurtful or beautiful, and it's just what it was, and it shaped me. But I think this could be such a gift to the community. There's a real generosity that comes in telling that story that I'm usually able to see. And because, I mean, it is, and I'm keeping Feminine Harbor small on purpose. I don't want it to grow, even though I've had offers for it to grow. I don't want it to, because it's really about my community. At this point, it really is about, to me, healing the women and creating the kinds of conversations that I want to see here in this region. This is where my kids are growing up. And so I'm still able to be a part of all those conversations in person. And I'm able to be honest with the storyteller and say, I think that's still hurting, or wonderful, you're ready to give that story. And it may come back, right? You were saying you revisited and you just realized, oh, and that's great. But at the time, you were ready to gift that. There was a lightness to it. I don't know that I have like a universal answer to that, but I do have an answer to our organization and how we work. So we always work together with the storyteller. So having an editor in general, when you are sharing a story, is always good, because there's someone there bouncing it off with you, right? Like, so don't work alone. Have someone read the story back to you and be an honest, critical friend, in the sense that they'll give you honest feedback. But in our organization, the women who are the board members and myself, like, we make ourselves open to working with the storytellers and being honest in the feedback and saying, okay, there is some elements here missing, or this is one of those things where we think you could cause harm. You might want to. So I find that, you know, this whole narrative that people operate by themselves and in their brains only, we need to get rid of that completely at some point. No one does. We have individual ideas, and we always have our own agency. Absolutely, I believe in that. And we have our own free will of where we have to take things. But eventually, even if you move direction, there will be more people in that new community that you're moving towards, and you're always going to be in relationship, right? And so being in relationship with people that can mirror back to you what they might see, that how this might be perceived, is always a good first step. And I think, you know, like I said, like, there's that preparation of you reading that story back to yourself and being very honest with yourself. Am I ready to really share this about me? There will be, I always also put that out there for my storytellers, like, if your grandma is in the audience, are you okay with sharing what you're sharing? Because she could be. We had a storyteller who, I forget her country of origin. It's not going to come to me right now. I wasn't prepared for that. I have to dig, because I've been doing this since 2016, but she was from Africa. I forget which country. And her grandpa joined online all the way from, and she was totally spooked by that, because her grandpa joined online. And I said, okay, well, did you follow my advice? Are you okay to tell that story with your grandpa? She's like, no, I'm good. It's okay. So, you know, I think that's always a really good rule of thumb. So again, thinking back to the communications team at the Waterloo Region District School Board, right, where I'm not the storyteller in that team, but what I'm seeing done really effectively is that they're asking the questions, they're gathering the data, and they're presenting it back to the community that they're leading with a lot of care, They're really investing in how they are presenting that information back. And they're also really invested in presenting it back and showing them, like, this is why you matter. So as a leader down the road, what are you doing to lead your communities to show them that, one, you're listening to them? How are you collecting that data? How are you listening to the people that you are leading? And is it open? Is it transparent? And next is, what are you going to do with that data? How are you going to then show them not only that you are collecting the information, but that you're actually listening, interpreting, and creating action from it? How do you put that, all of that knowledge back to the community that you're leading? What are the systemic, structural changes? So I'm part, with the Waterloo Region District School Board as a vice principal, I'm part of the structural change. I'm not part of the people who are gathering the information or creating the narrative. I'm part of the structural change. So I'm one of the leaders actually on the ground who saying, okay, I'm listening. I'm carefully listening. We're working with the communications team and we're working with the superintendents. And now on the ground, what does that look like, right? So you have to have a team on the ground that is actually executing all of that vision. And that is a feedback loop. Like it's ongoing, because ultimately, especially if we want to continue to live in a world that is connected, then you have to recognize that some people come and go. And so you may have something that works now and that is wonderful, but in 5 years' time, you need to be prepared to continue to learn and change. Because in 5 years' time, one, youth grows. And that time piece, I think a lot of the times we try to suppress time and growth. How do we create structures with mechanisms that allow us to always stay reflective and to grow and to change with the people that we're leading? Because ultimately, the kids in your community that you're leading, or the kids of the people that you're leading, they're going to grow and they're going to take space. And there's also going to be immigration to count into, right? So how do newcomers into the communities and spaces that you're leading, how are they being heard, and what do they bring that is new? What's your mechanism to be reanalyzing and reflecting every 2 or and so those strategic plans and visions of how are you breaking down time? Is it every 2 years? Is it every 5? And being humble to the fact that in 10 years' time, it could look so like something completely different, right? And having succession plans too. So working with youth in the communities that you lead, because again, I don't know that people realize, like in 20 years' time, I was saying that to Olivia, in 20 years' time, I'm done. I am going to retire and I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing, but like I'm done in the education system. So I'm not going to be around forever, right? And I need to have vision and forming young, I love, one of the things I'm most passionate about right now in my job is to mentor younger OTs, or occasional teachers. They're 20 years old, 25. They're coming into the system right now. But I recognize that in 15 years' time, I'm not going to be the one around. They will. So I need to be the one shaping and helping and supporting them, because if I want the kind of leadership that I believe in to live through, it's going to live through them, not me. I'm going to be done and out. Right? So those are some of the things I think we overlook and we need to really be careful about.